mean, honestly, can you get more beautiful than this? I mean, seriously, this is like as beautiful as it gets for me. Our choices matter in the world. When you choose a bred dog, you deprive a rescued animal of the home. The Buddhist tenet is that you shouldn't kill, but somehow there's this strange loophole where eating the meat that has been harmed from the animal that was killed is not. And so people kind of seek refuge in that.
It's very easy to be vegetarian, but it's so hard to be vegan.
I feel like every time I'm not speaking about it, there's 92 billion land animals that we kill every single year.
Our world is predicated on animal agriculture. Why not cut the middleman out? Get the protein straight from the source. You could feed so many more people. It's just about recalibrating our minds. We actually don't give anything up. We simply stop taking what was never ours to take.
One of the biggest misconceptions I had about India, and particularly Mumbai, was that
It's my first episode in Thailand.
Yay.
I've never done this before.
Thank you for having me. And
Thank
Lily.
you for doing this. And
No
she's the
problem.
star. But it's such a land of contrast, right? On one end, you've got bustling street food, you've this vibrant markets, you've got such a prominent wildlife. At the same time, there's waste, there's animal exploitation, there's cruelty on multiple forms. So I'm here today talking to someone who advocates for change on all of those levels. Richie Kul, an actor, a model, a vegan activist. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome to Sustainable
So
Tea with
excited.
Shreya. Sustainable Thai tea with
Yes,
Shreya.
it's Thai
That
tea
is-
with oat milk.
Love it. I can't wait to
So
try
let's,
that.
let's cheers.
Cheers. That
Cheers.
looks beautiful.
Yeah, so nice, right?
I get it.
To a wonderful conversation, a new friendship, and hoping to advocate for change and making a difference in the world.
All of the above, which you're already doing. But
Likewise.
as a Thai American, how do you think veganism fits in this culture?
I think that it's actually a culture that is very conducive and leaning towards veganism already. There's like a strong Buddhist current here. Like 90% of Thai people are Buddhist. And there is a strong advocacy for that underneath. If you really peer deeply into the scripture and you understand the tenets of doing no harm.
Yeah.
So there's the foundation for that. And Thai people are naturally such compassionate people. But I think like everyone in the world, it's easy to rely on excuses. It's easy to rely on traditions and comfort and choose the easier path. So a lot of conversations I've had with Thai people where they might have an inclination where they say they love animals, but their reluctance is just the convenience of going out with friends and missing out, the FOMO, fear of missing out kind of like takes over, and it prevents people from sometimes aligning their actions with their values.
Yeah. You mentioned Buddhism, that Thailand is predominantly Buddhist. I know Buddhists who are vegetarian, but I also know some Buddhists who are not vegetarian. But one of the tenets of Buddhism is ahimsa. And that goes with non-violence towards all living beings. How does that add up?
It doesn't really add up. The problem is that there's loopholes in life with everything, and a lot of people find ways around it. So the Buddhist tenet is that you shouldn't kill. So harming the animal directly is a sin, but somehow there's this strange loophole where eating the meat that has been harmed from the animal that was killed is not. And so people kind of seek refuge in that. And I understand that because for the longest time, I was vegetarian for 20 years before switching to vegan 10 years ago. And I saw it's called confirmation bias, where you tell ourselves something, not because it's steeped in reality, but because you want to believe it. So I told myself that the dairy cows and the egg-laying hens were treated well, not because it was rooted in any kind of truth, but because I wanted to continue my behavior, and I wanted to believe that that was the case.
Yeah.
When you probe deeper and you look into the industries, you realize that the suffering is even more immense than the meat industries because they prolong the suffering. It's actually torture in a way, where they take the baby from the mother. It's predicated on breaking the mother-child bond, which is one of the strongest bonds that we have in this universe.
Yeah.
again and again and again, and making her fail at the one thing that she wants to do, which is to take care of her child. And then to add insult to injury, once you've depleted her will to live and she can no longer stand, you kill her. And
when she can no longer produce milk, when she's no longer
when
profitable.
no longer useful, exactly. And with chickens, they grind the males up from the start, and that's gruesome for many people. But actually, they're the lucky ones because they're spared the misery of their sisters who have to like live in squalor in tiny little cages where they can barely move. They have to be debeaked because out of just sheer torture and frustration, they just like peck at each other. And they're genetically altered in a way that they can barely stand on their own 2 feet, and then forced to live in this miserable condition, laying egg after egg after egg until they're no longer useful as well, and then they're killed again. So in a way that once you realize that, you realize that we can do so much better.
Yeah, even as women, to support that reproductive exploitation, right? We fight for bodily autonomy, and at the same time, these animals are being used for the reproductive organs, and as you said, breaking the bond between the mother and the child, which is so sacred.
Exactly, and carnism is predicated on basically being anti-feminist and doing the most harm as possible, because it's all predicated on harming the females, harming the mothers.
Yeah.
And we can do so much better for them, and we should. They deserve so much more. But going back to the topic, I do try to do my best to kind of shine a light on this hypocrisy and this idea that it doesn't really make sense. Because in Thai tradition, a lot of people will go on Sundays or to celebrate a graduation, or before a big monumental event, they'll release fish into the river, or they'll pay money to help save a cow from slaughter. And I think that that's noble and great, but one, those fish are actually released into rivers that are not habitable for them. So it's actually not good for the fish at all. So it's this self-serving practice that we do, not because it's good for them, but it's good for us. And I just try to shine a light to people and say that even if you don't care about the animals, but you want blessings or benedictions, you would do so much better, and you would get so much more out of actually being kind and not eating the fish and not saving the cow essentially from yourself, because that cow is being saved from people who want to eat its flesh. And this world operates on a law of supply and demand. And if we no longer demand their flesh, they no longer supply these animals for us to kill. And they're no longer brought into the world with expiration dates stamped on their backs, literally, waiting to basically die. It's a horrible, gruesome thing. And once people know that, I wish people would kind of move in that direction, because when we know better, we ought to do better.
Yeah, no one wants to believe they're bad. No one wants to believe that they're supporting cruel industries, right? And that's the biggest hurdle that I see.
No one wants to be seen as cruel. No one wants to be seen as unkind. But what people don't realize is that you actually have to be kind and generous and good in order to deserve that designation of being a good person. We automatically think that we're entitled to this idea of being good and kind.
Yeah.
No, we're not. We actually have to earn it each and every day in each and every way. And if we're engaging in a practice that is inherently cruel and unkind 3 times a day, how can we even profess to speak of like kindness and compassion and changing the world if we can't even change what's on our plate? That's the big conundrum that like confronts me on a daily basis is how can I resolve this idea and bridge that gap between this idea of how people want to see themselves and what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
And so my belief is that the best and most powerful way to do that is to show, not tell. I'll speak to people, I'll speak to friends that are on the cusp and they want that guidance. And I've had hundreds of them, from fans to followers to good friends and family members who've wanted that kind of nudge. But the most powerful thing is to literally be a living testament to what you believe and showing that you can live an aspirational, appealing, healthy life without harming animals. And that's what I strive to do.
Fit as well. I've seen all of your reels. They're mostly in the gym. But coming back to Buddhism and where we are, the context of it, you also have a vegetarian festival, right? There's something...
The Jae Festival.
The Jae Festival?
So it's usually in the fall, and it's between 10 to 14 days, and it's a purification of sorts. So a lot of people will engage in this and participate in it, but then, and they enjoy it. For those 10 to 14 days, it's a joyous, time period in Thailand where the streets are flooded with these yellow flags, and you have a readily accessible access to wonderful vegan food. But the moment it stops, it literally stops, like from one day to the next. And I often encourage people to like make that connection that if this is something that's good to do for those 10 and 14 days, why not continue it? Why not, if you're looking for blessings, if you're looking to cleanse yourself, if you're looking for whatever, you'll get that year round if you choose to kind of put that into daily practice.
Purification of the mind and soul, as you said. So if it's being purified by not consuming meat or animal byproducts, then as you said, why don't we continue that throughout the year?
Exactly. And now we have all the tools necessary to do that. Even compared to 5 years ago, we're light years ahead in so many cities around the world, but in particular Bangkok. There's so many vegan restaurants. There's so many like meat substitutes. We have everything in our arsenal to make it a reality. It's just this is what's holding us back sometimes.
So many people would use culture, seafood, right? It's such a big industry here. It's been part of the history, even insects for that matter. I've seen crickets and worms as being fried and spiced as part of street delicacy that people enjoy. So do you think adopting this lifestyle and giving up on meat or seafood here would be going against the culture?
I don't think so at all, because I think that's a novelty culture. That's not really a Thai culture, but it's literally like going to Khao San Road and like eating a scorpion. That's not part of Thai culture. It's shock factor culture. And it's something that, just like bullfighting in Spain, it might be an insignia, kind of like a symbol of Spanish culture. But there's so much more to Spanish culture than cruelty. I mean, what people don't know is these bulls are not given a fair fight. They're basically maimed, and their eyes are kind of clouded. They're kept in horrible conditions before. They're made to go insane, so that the matador is already at a tremendous advantage before the fight even begins. And to say that that is part of Spanish culture, I would think that Spaniards all around the world would probably want to be associated with something much more compassionate and beautiful than something like that.
So,
Wow,
oh my
that looks
God,
amazing.
look at that.
นี่คืออะไรนะครับ
What do we have here?
This is Mahanakhon Tanlen. So it means the restaurant. The name of the restaurant is Mahanakhon. Tanlen is kind of like eating for fun. So this is chicken wrapped in pandan leaves, and this is for this sauce. And then these other ones
Vegan
are,
chicken, guys.
Yes,
Just want to
vegan
clarify.
chicken,
It's
of
vegan
course.
chicken.
Okay, this one is for these ones up
These?
here.
แต่ข้างบนไม่ต้องทานคู่กับน้ำจิ้มก็ได้ค่ะแต่ระวังพริกขี้หนูนะคะ
Okay, she said, "Be careful of the spice," but I know you like spicy.
Oh,
so
I
you'll
love
be fine.
spicy. I can pass this around. So
Compliment
thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Dig in.
This as well. That looks so good.
Yeah, bon appetit.
Bon appetit. What do you want? What's a Thai way of saying bon appetit? Do you have a word for that?
I don't know if there really is a specific phrase.
Before you eat or before Lily's attentions on the
Yeah,
food.
she's like, "Ooh, I want some. You want something? I can give you some."
What do you want, Lily?
Maybe we try this one first. This is like a,
Yeah, let's go with that. Is that a pineapple?
I think so. Cheers.
Cheers. This is the most fun way of doing a podcast while eating.
Very refreshing.
So good.
But you were asking before, would Thai culture lose its Thainess by becoming vegan? And this is literally perfect timing. It literally comes at the perfect time where you can showcase that Thai culture is just as beautiful and just as vibrant without the meat. It's very easy. And Thai food is actually very easily veganized. A lot of Thai dishes, the only kind of difference is that they use fish sauce and oyster sauce.
Exactly.
And now there's like a plethora of vegan fish sauce and vegan oyster sauce options, so that it's super, super easy to actually make any dish vegan.
People would make the livelihood argument though, right? They would say there's so many lives and jobs dependent on these industries, whether that's seafood or the meat industry, any of that. How does that balance with what we're trying to do, which is advocating for more plant-based systems?
As an ambassador for a lot of charities who have helped transition farms from being dog meat farms to normal farms that kind of produce agricultural goods, I've seen firsthand that most people who are trapped in these industries actually don't want to be in these industries. They don't want to be gaining their livelihood when it's predicated on suffering. So if you give them that option, you give them the tools necessary to transition to something more compassionate, they'll be all for it. So I worked with a charity called Change for Animals Foundation. I was their first celebrity ambassador. And we helped shut down several dog meat farms and transition to growing blueberries.
Wow.
And now these places that used to be kind of steeped in cruelty and suffering are now growing vibrant fruits and vegetables and making more profit than they used to. And so it's a win-win for everyone.
And they're open to that. They're open to, because you hear of these proud fishermen, people who are really proud of what they've been doing for generations. My dad was a fisherman. My grandfather was a fisherman. This is all we've known all our lives. So by doing this, you're taking that away from them. Is there an aspect of that?
There will
Pride and
always be
culture?
people who are resistant to change, but I've always focused on the idea of targeting and kind of nurturing the hearts of people who have fertile minds and hearts to make change. And so we can dwell on the people who don't want to change, or we can focus on the people who actually are poised and ready for it. And if we do that, the options and the sky's the limit, really.
Yeah. I want to come to animal tourism because that's why I've seen a lot of Indians, I've seen a lot of global tourists in general that would take selfies with tigers, that would want to bathe elephants, that so many of in my backpacking days, I remember people used to go to these elephant sanctuaries to bathe elephants and to feed them and to stay with them. Even though I knew there were ethical concerns with a lot of these sanctuaries because they just, under the guise of ethical tourism, there's a lot of exploitation. But it's a big part of the Thai economy, I would imagine. Like tourism industry especially would rely heavily on these animal shows or wildlife shows. How do you reconcile, like me as a tourist, how can I be more responsible coming in, knowing that I might want to take a picture with the tiger for photo ops, but I don't know anything about what goes on behind the scenes?
I think that as a tourist, we have a duty to be responsible consumers and to educate ourselves and not expect to have everything kind of thrown on our laps. And once we do the research, it's plain to see that tigers are not meant to live in cages and be drugged in order to be domestic enough and docile enough to take photos with you. I think deep down we all know this. And we also know that it's a really bad look in this day and age to take a photo with it. It's like, what are we trying to proclaim to the world? What are we trying to say about ourselves by taking a photo with a defenseless animal that's been drugged and deprived of any will to live so that you can take a photo? I think that when we educate ourselves on this and we better ourselves, we know that we're better than that. And so I would hope that one, we take some self-accountability, and two, we look into more ethical options for interacting with animals. Nowadays, a lot of charities are advocating for no touch.
No touch.
So with elephants, you're still able to go to these beautiful sanctuaries, but you're able to see these animals from a distance and in their natural habitat, so they can live as they were meant to live. I'm definitely on the more ethical end of the spectrum when it comes to tourism, but I also understand that it's not easy to be a purist. And if we can advocate for improvement in the industry, and we recognize that a lot of these elephants have been rescued from human exploitation and are used to human touch. And if there are elephant sanctuaries that have rescued them and take really good care of them, like Lek Chai Lut, who is called the elephant whisperer of Thailand. And she is kind of like the pioneer of the elephant sanctuary movement here in Thailand. And she was featured in this show that I shot last year called Eating Plants. And she's truly an inspiration. I would say that she's kind of like the Jane Goodall of Thailand. She's vegan as well, so she's extended her compassion to all living beings, and I love that. But these animals, literally, she calls out their names, and they run from like an acre away towards her. And to say that she should be deprived of that interaction with them, I don't think that's good for them at all, because they actually have formed this deep emotional connection with her.
Which is
And so-
symbiotic, it's not based on exploitation.
So I think that there's a fine line that we should draw. But I think that, I don't know if you've heard about this in the news, but just a few days ago, a tourist was killed bathing an elephant in the river.
Sunk its tusk into her. That's what I read. Yeah.
And there are consequences to forcing an animal to defy its nature. And this isn't the elephant's fault. This is a human man-made problem that we've constructed by trying to make something that's not natural.
Because elephants bathe on their own, and imagine
Yes.
having to bathe multiple times a day just for photo opportunity, just for us to look good on Instagram. Obviously, the elephant's going to react at some point.
And more fans and friends are becoming more savvy to this. And when you look at these photos, oftentimes there are comments from people growing. The incidence of these comments are growing more and more. Where people are like, why are you choosing to be cruel? Why are you not going to an elephant sanctuary instead of riding an elephant?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think nowadays, like, riding is so
Looked
gauche.
down
It's so like past its prime. Most people don't do that, but now there is still this elephant bathing,
Yeah.
and there are the close-up photo ops. But I think that's already a movement in the right direction.
I was at Central Park about 2 months ago, and I did street activism with the horse riders there. And we were almost like calling out to people who are choosing these rides, like saying the horses are not meant for this. It's breaking their backs. It was over their weight limit, like all of those things. But the drivers would either just abuse us, like they would just like scream at us, and even the visitors would just be like, "Don't talk to us, like just get away." So that cognitive dissonance of just not wanting to see what's going on and not wanting to acknowledge that you're participating in and actively paying for it, because it's such a strong union as well of all of these drivers. But we have that in India. There's camel rides. There's horses that are used during weddings. So I'd like to believe that it would get increasingly embarrassing and outdated, but there's still a practice that I know that actively happens around the world. How do I, as a tourist, know what is genuine? What's a genuine elephant conservation effort versus something that's unethical and based on exploitation? Is there a way for me to
I believe
navigate?
there are standards, and as I mentioned before, there are certain sanctuaries that do not advocate for touch at all. So you have to watch the animal from afar. And I think that when you look at photos and you see firsthand how these sanctuaries are run, we all deep down intrinsically get a sense for whether or not they're ethical or not. If there's riding, obviously that's a no-go.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the mahout or the person working there, like elephants should not be ridden, because the only way that happened in the first place was that it was beaten to submission. It was taken from its mother at an early age.
Held captive.
Yes, horrible. In chains, its will broken so that it can do these things that it's not meant to do. Deep down we know.
Yeah.
And so sometimes for a simple photo, we allow this animal to live this torturous, horrific life. It's just beyond me. But I think that change is happening because more and more people are opening their minds and awakening their hearts to the reality that what we pay for is what we see in the world.
Yeah.
And there will be more options for us like this. We just have to investigate. We have to look into Google reviews. We have to look at photos. We have to take accountability for the decisions that we make.
Influencers have a huge responsibility as well. Every time they come to Thailand and you're posing with an elephant and you're posing with a tiger and you want to promote that as what you should do when you come to Thailand, I feel like that's highly irresponsible too, without doing your research and just making something look aspirational and appealing. There's a lot that needs to be done in that area. And of course, I think the tourism industry also needs to adopt better and more ethical practices at the same time. The ivory trade. I've seen so many people buy ivory products, and there's a massive wildlife trade that happens in Thailand as well. Do you want to tell us more about that?
I think it's heartbreaking. I mean, why romanticize the kill? Like I've just never really understood the romanticization of ivory or fur or leather. It's literally, why not feel comfortable in our own skin, that we don't have to adorn ourselves in the remnants of an animal that was tortured? I think that the key to advocating for change and affecting real meaningful change is to instill in people's minds that these are barbaric practices. Like, we're literally modern day, well-adorned cavemen parading around in someone else's flesh. Actually, Thailand is putting in pretty strong measures that if ivory is detected when people leave the country, there are stiff and heavy penalties. So I'm really hoping that this is a natural deterrent for a lot of people to realize that this is not the right way to do things.
Is there a way for me to appreciate animals and still get close to them? Because I feel like connection is really important. So many people are disconnected from the natural world, which is why they don't want to protect it. The reason I feel so strongly for nature is because I grew up with it. I grew up with animals. The same love that I feel for a dog, I know a calf feels the same love, pain, joy on the same level. There's no difference. It's just our minds, right? It's just the conditioning. So I do feel like the more people are in touch with nature, the more they interact with animals, or at least see animals, they'd form that sense of empathy. But the types of interaction that we've created are highly exploitative at the same time. So is there a way for humans to form that connection and bond with animals without exploiting them?
I think that certain animals, like domesticated animals, have been conditioned through thousands and thousands of years to be coexisting with humans.
Yeah.
And I think that a trip to a farm sanctuary, a proper farm sanctuary that has rescued animals from slaughter and exploitation, should be mandatory for children 5 to 15. Like that way they get a real connection with animals right from the start and have a sense. And cows, sheep, chickens, pigs, they're okay to be petted.
Yeah.
They're not okay to be eaten. And I think that if we instill that in children's minds, that the bacon and the ham and the steak that they have, for Sunday roast comes from that animal. A lot of children are intrinsically compassionate beings. We've actually conditioned them to defy their natures. If you put a child in a crib and you put a rabbit and an apple in that crib with them, they will instinctively eat the apple and play with the rabbit. But we've somehow distorted their minds to believe that the rabbit is also food, when it actually, by nature, would be that child's friend.
Yeah.
And I think that if you, at an early age, you allow children to be exposed to connections like that, the world would be such a better place.
Absolutely. And I've seen reels of, children recognizing they see a dead fish and they're like, oh my God, no, but it was a living being. It was a sentient being that was killed for my food. And, they cry, they break down, and, they say, I will never eat it again. But obviously they're bullied. They're teased and they're bullied into eating what the adults eat or what their parents eat. Even they're bullied even in school. I know so many times, till date, I get teased for being a vegan.
And yet, somehow, vegans, when they choose to raise their children ethically, are told that they're imposing their beliefs on their children.
Yeah.
And yet, meat eaters are imposing their beliefs on their children on a day-to-day basis without anyone saying a thing. It's just, the irony of that is not lost on me. It's just, it's baffling that we tell children to eat this without a second thought. Like, and they say, you know what, and with Lily too, I get it all the time. Like, oh, Lily is vegan. You're engaging in animal abuse. She's 15 years old. She's the healthiest being I've ever met. She's vibrant. She's happy.
She's so
and
calm.
I think that people should focus their energy, rather than being an armchair vet and thinking they know everything, to focusing on the animals languishing in shelters that are given like a 7-day span in which to be claimed. Otherwise, they're killed. There's like kill shelters around the world where animals are given 1 to 2 weeks. And if they're not picked up, they're killed. That's where the focus should be, not on an animal who's like loved beyond belief, who's like worshipped and cherished each and every day by her father. Like, this is not where the attention should be put. The attention should be put on the animals that are at death's door because people are irresponsible breeders and choosing to romanticize fancy designer pets rather than animals that could be just as worthy of our love and concern.
Absolutely. And they deserve a home. I do want to talk about Lily and the fact that you're raising her on a vegan diet. I imagine there would be a lot of backlash, and people will say that dogs are meant to be carnivores, dogs cannot thrive on a plant-based diet. But obviously, as you said, she's 15, and look at her.
She is the epitome of everything that can happen if you make that connection with an animal and allow them to express who they are, and you give them that chance. So for me, she was the gateway to becoming a better person. I was vegetarian for so long, and she was kind of the spark that convinced me to advocate more strongly. Because I just felt that when I was raising this living being, it just made me try to be a more responsible, thoughtful human being and understand the feelings that other animals have too, and just to do better, to be better, to do better, to make her proud. Because the strongest thing in my mind is like this question that I often ask myself is, would Lily be proud of me? Would she like be proud of her father and what he's doing for animals just like her, who were not given the privilege of kind of being born like one of the 2 or 3 designated animals that are protected by humans rather than exploited by them. It's such an arbitrary thing, because pigs are even smarter than dogs.
Yes.
And I can't imagine a being even smarter than my Lily, who is like languishing in hell because they were born the wrong species. It's such an arbitrary thing, but because I loved her so much, I needed to do what was ethical but also responsible to her. And so I did a bunch of research, and I found that one of the longest living dogs in human record was a vegan dog named Bramble, who lived to be 26 years old.
Bramble. Okay.
Bramble lived to be 26 years old. And obviously I would want Lily to be around for as long as possible. And so I knew that it was not only the ethical thing, but it was actually really good for her health. And dogs are omnivorous, so they can easily live and thrive on a vegan diet as well. And oftentimes I'm accosted by people who say, it's not natural, you know, dogs should live like wolves. Well, guess what? Wolves do not have air conditioning. Wolves do not have leashes and collars and furry
Names
beds and
toys.
groomings.
Yeah.
And wolves also live between 6 to 8 years old. And most of us would not want our dogs to only live 6 to 8 years old. So sometimes what's natural is not always best. Wolves also feast on carrion and literally just eat whatever they can find. It's not the best life. And so sometimes modern day advancements are actually good for us. And so instead of cherry picking these things, we should also acknowledge that there are better ways to do things for ourselves and for our companion animals and even cats. Most people would say that dogs are omnivorous, but cats are obligate carnivores. But actually, that's not true either, because the taurine, which is the nutrient that they need to thrive and live a wonderful life, is actually synthesized in meat-based cat kibbles as well. So it's something that can be synthesized as well in vegan kibbles. And I also know many vegan cats that are living well into their 20s. So it's often our mind is this limitation. We hear one little soundbite and we think that this is the way it is. But the world is full of infinite possibilities, and we can do so much better for ourselves and for our animals.
So much of the world that we live in, so much of what we consume is not natural. Our phones, for example, our clothes, like we've evolved. So I think the whole point of our existence is to evolve, but also to stay in touch with our ancestral wisdom. But everything that's outright unnatural cannot just be discounted and thrown out of the window. But what do you feed her? I'd love to know.
I feed her a vegan kibble called Bee Planet, and then I supplement that with, because I've done a lot of research as well, and I think that research is something that you should do ongoing rather than just hear something once and then keep that into practice forever. And so I've done research that says that actually dry kibble is not very healthy. So it's like all the nutrients have kind of been depleted from the heating process of forming the kibbles. So I supplement that with sweet potato, lentils, pumpkin, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables that I add to her kibble. And that's been really good for her.
Yeah, definitely wanted to know what she eats, but that sounds super healthy. It sounds
and
delicious.
And you know what? Just like you and I, we don't want to eat the same thing over and over again. So I try to rotate based on seasonal availability, whatever she eats. And then, of course, she eats a little bit of what Dad eats every day, because I try to eat as healthy as I possibly can. I'm kind of a junk food vegan, to be honest. But I will intentionally choose healthy items, not for myself, but for her, so I can share them with her. And so she eats a lot of...
a loved dog.
Yes.
As you rescued her.
Yes.
I do want to talk about the breeding industry for just a second, because I know so many of my friends who find the most aesthetic dog and they're like, I want this breed and I want that breed. But when you buy a dog, not a lot of people know what happens in the breeding industry. There's so many dogs that need to be rescued. There's so many dogs that are in shelters that would love to find a loving house, and they deserve to find a loving home.
When you choose a bred dog, you deprive a rescued animal of a home. I truly believe that. And I truly believe that our choices matter in the world. And as much as these dogs are beautiful and aesthetic and they're from beautiful breeds, I mean, honestly, can you get more beautiful than this?
No.
I mean, seriously, this is like as beautiful as it gets for me. And the idea that she is a rescue and that I'm doing a good thing and giving a baby that needed a home fits so well in the line so perfectly with my vegan values and ethics. So it was just a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. Anything you'd like to say to anyone that would consider buying a dog or that wants a bred dog about the breeding industry?
I think that we often impose our beliefs, confirmation bias, as I was talking to you about before, that somehow these animals are always well taken care of. They're always from responsible breeders. The mother of that baby that you get wasn't asked if she was ready to part with her child. You don't know how strong that bond was. And oftentimes I wonder if people ever think about like the mourning that a mother has to go through when her child is taken away. Um, a lot of people just are dismissive of like, oh, like they lose the bond. That's not necessarily true. When given the chance to live together, a lot of mother, child, dog, and cat pairs actually continue to be bonded for the entirety of their lives.
Yeah.
I truly believe that people should investigate, just like with the tourism industry, the available options and realize that there is a plethora of beautiful, loving animals to adopt that easily could be a wonderful member of your family.
That's so true. And like it's the same with calves. I've seen this, the minute they're separated from their mothers, they stop eating. They miss their mom so much that I've seen them just refuse food entirely. I've been to cow shelters in India. You know, I'm like, why is this calf so skinny? And you know, they told me that we separated her because the mom got pregnant again or was made pregnant again, and the calf just stops eating because it's like 10 months old. It's 18 months old, and they wouldn't eat food without their mom.
I think it's truly heartbreaking, the things that we do and the excuses that we use to justify awful behaviors. I mean, I have so many Indian friends that revere the cow just because, you know, they're Hindu. They've grown up with this idea of reverence for this beautiful sacred animal that is so gentle and so loving if given that chance. And yet they make excuses for this idea of taking her away from her child, drinking the milk that was meant for that child. Why not use that energy that we can use towards finding these excuses to doing the right thing and equipping ourselves with the tools necessary to live a more ethical life that's good for our health, good for the planet, good for our animal friends. It's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. That's what drives me, because I feel like every time I'm not speaking about it, there's 92 billion land animals that we kill every single year. And just that, like as you and I are speaking right now, I'm sure there's millions of animals that are being killed, like the number of chickens that we kill on a daily basis, right? 202 million chickens that we kill on a daily basis. Just imagine that. And sometimes the more ethical option, the more environmentally friendly option is not the most ethical option, because you can swap eating chicken for beef, but the number of chickens that you're killing for the same pound of meat, it doesn't add up.
I think what baffles me is our world is predicated on animal agriculture, and it's incredibly inefficient. Why not cut the middleman out? Get the protein straight from the source that your meal got their protein from. It's healthier, it's more nutritious, even if we don't care about animals. 1 acre of land in general can yield 40,000 pounds of tomatoes, 50,000 pounds of potatoes, or 150 pounds of beef. So even if we didn't care about animals, but we were concerned about world hunger,
food insecurity.
we could do away with world hunger in one fell swoop if we just allocated land from animal agriculture to growing plants.
Yeah, to feed people instead of feeding the animals that we then consume.
20 pounds of grain is needed to produce 1 pound of beef. You could feed so many more people. It's an incredibly inefficient process. Animal agriculture is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than all modes of transport combined. It's the leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, destruction of the Amazon rainforest. We've cleared so much of the Amazon rainforest to grow crops. Most of the crops that are grown in the world, I don't think people realize, it's actually grown for animals rather than us. And if it was allocated for human consumption, we could feed so many more people.
Yeah. And plants have feelings. Every time someone tells me plants have feelings, I'm like, if you really care about those feelings, think about 80% of the crops that we grow, soy and corn especially, is grown to feed animals. If you really care about plants so much, maybe just stop eating animals.
And did you know that if you care so much about plants, which they don't, by the way, spoiler alert, they don't. If you cared about the plants, you would kill fewer plants if you ate them directly rather than sending them for consumption for the animal that you then eat. You would save more corn, you would save more beans, you would save more everything if you just ate them directly.
Yeah.
And veganism is not a state of perfection. It's an attempt to live in accordance with ethical beliefs and minimize suffering, not eliminate. So when people say, oh, you walk on the street, you step on, it's about intention. I think intentions really matter. And I will never seek out to intentionally harm another living being.
Absolutely.
If I see an ant or a cockroach or an insect in my apartment, I will gently guide it out. I will never harm an animal intentionally. That's the difference between the vegan way of life and a non-vegan way of life.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you brought out intention, because people talk about like the crop killing and pesticides and all of that to grow vegan food as well. But as you said, it's about intention. It's about not wanting to participate in that knowingly. If we could all grow our own food and if we could all eat that way, like soil to plate, I think we'd all sign up for that. But the land clearance, so much of land today is just being used to raise animals.
I hear it so much nowadays. They're actually getting desperate, and I feel like it's almost a good sign that carnists are using this like field mice. Don't you worry about the field mice that are being cleared because of your food. I'm like, no, it's your food actually, because most of it is for meat, for animals to eat that you then kill. Yeah. So it's a double whammy. If you're actually concerned about animals, as you say you are, which you aren't, you're killing the field mice and you're killing the animals that you eat.
Yeah.
And you're killing more of them. So it's about minimization, because unfortunately in life, there will be death, there will be harm, but we try our best in our capacity to minimize that suffering as best we can. I think that with veganism, it's such a beautiful movement, and it's largely female driven.
Yes.
It's like incredible leaders like you who are leading the charge. And it's, I'd say 70 to 80% women, because personally, I think women are naturally more compassionate than men. They just get it more. And maybe it's from being mothers or having that maternal role, but they just naturally have more compassion. But I'm trying to use my platform to advocate for men to step up, to own their responsibility and hold their own and lead the charge as well. Because for so long, we've been indoctrinated with this myth that somehow masculinity is associated with control and aggression and pillaging and being violent, when actually the true measure of a man is taking care of and being compassionate rather than exploiting those less fortunate. And I'm trying to use my platform to advocate for a recalibration in our minds of what it truly means to be a man. Because we can be so much more of a man by looking after rather than taking advantage of our fellow living beings.
Yeah, and it's for several reasons. I think the idea of eating meat and that being more masculine, but also so many of my male friends are worried about how much muscle they're going to lose if they go vegan, and the fact that they need animal protein to be able to go to the gym. And all of these gym bros will tell you need creatine and you need whey protein, which is just a byproduct of the dairy industry. And you need to have certain amount of eggs per day, and you need to eat paneer, for example, in India. Where do you get your protein from, and how do you stay fit?
I get my protein from, I get this question all the time, and I get my protein from the same source that gorillas and bulls and rhinos and the strongest animals in the animal kingdom get. I get my protein from plants. So and if I want to supplement, I will supplement with a pea protein or an almond protein. There's like so many sources nowadays, and vegetables are actually very rich in protein. Have you ever met someone who has a protein deficiency?
I didn't even know what it was called. I didn't even know what protein deficiency was called.
It hardly exists, because the only way you can be protein deficient is if you're calorie deficient. And if you eat enough food, you will naturally get enough protein. The problem actually lies in too much protein. It's actually not good for the kidneys and the liver and all our internal organs to process. So as long as we eat enough, we're healthy enough as it is. And I know that as an actor and model, I have to stay strong and masculine and healthy and vibrant to get work and to basically find a living. And I have had no problems, but I need to make sure that my life is a testament to my values and to be aspirational, so that people look at me and they say, you know what, he's doing okay. So whatever he's doing, we can do too. Because if I can do it, I know anyone can do it.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the only argument I hear, that we absorb animal protein better, and that a lot of people who went vegetarian or even vegan lost muscle mass immediately, like just couldn't be buff anymore.
I've actually gotten stronger. I recover faster. My skin is cleared up a lot more. I used to have really bad acne. The moment I stopped dairy and eggs, after years and years of like a bunch of medications that were not good for me, within weeks it cleared up. And I was always wondering, I'm vegetarian. Why is my skin not better than this? And as an actor, as a model, being in front of the camera all the time, it was awful. The moment I stopped, my skin got better. My soul felt lighter. My energy levels were high, went through the roof. It's the best thing I've done for myself, for the planet, for the animals. It's been such a win-win. And I really hope that more people will open their hearts and minds to a kinder way of living.
Yeah, same. I had PCOS. I reversed my PCOS ever since I went vegan. Huge amount of acne that I grew up with, spots all over, got rid of acne, skin was glowing, lots of energy, hair got better, lost a lot of weight, you know. Same, I think it's the vegan glow, right? That's what's reflecting, and you feel better on the inside as well. I love that. Thank you so much, Richie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this with me.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. And thank you for using your platform the way that you do to speak for animals so openly and so vocally. Because a lot of people, as you said, shy away from the V word, shy away from using vegan. I have it written on my bio, loudly, boldly, proudly. I'll say that I'm vegan, even though it has a bad
Why not
rap.
be proud of being compassionate?
Yeah.
I think that we shouldn't shy away from designations just because we're worried about how others feel. For me, I'm more focused on the 90 billion animals that are languishing and suffering.
Yeah.
And I know people say change takes time, but those animals don't have that luxury of time. They're literally at death's door. And so that's why there's such urgency with what you do, what I do, because we know who we're fighting for.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to concern myself with like offending someone by using the V word when I'm more concerned about the animal who's being imminently harmed because of other people's choices.
Yeah.
And so I will never stop speaking, just as I know you won't, because we have a duty to do that for the most voiceless
and most
defenseless
vegans do.
things.
If you know the truth, speak up.
Yeah.
Let other people know. Even if you're planting a seed, the world's not going to go vegan overnight, but the least we can do is try.
That's why I think activism is important, because vegan is a net neutral position.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people think it's the end all be all, but it's literally just the basic starting point to being a decent person. So activism is why it's important, because net neutral is not good enough. We need to do more. And that's why I'm just so proud of what you're doing in shining a light. So thank you so much.
One last question to you, Richie. Is there anything you'd like to say to pre-vegans? Because I believe most people are vegan in their center, but most people are pre-vegan because they just don't know the truth yet or haven't reached that point where they empathize with animals the way that vegans do. Is there anything you'd like to say to someone who's contemplating going plant-based or who wants to become vegan?
I would say for people on the cusp, follow your heart. Do what you know deep down is right. Don't look for excuses. Look for the opportunities to align your actions with your values, because deep down, we know that there is no kind way to kill. Animals are not gently cuddled into nuggets or fillets. There is tremendous suffering involved to bring that meat onto one's plate. And so if we truly value peace and compassion and love, let's practice with practicing peace on our plates and aligning our actions with our values through our choices, because we can do it. I've done it. You've done it. We all can do it. And we all have a role to, rather than point fingers at other people for harming animals, we are complicit and we can be the change we want to see in the world.
Absolutely. Sorry, my last question, which I keep saying this, but it's my standard
I'm
question.
enjoying it so much too. So
what does sustainability mean to you?
Sustainability is, to me, living in accordance with Mother Nature and understanding that she is our home. She is what allows us to be vibrant and free and live the lives that we live. And so we have a role, an accountability to making sure that we pay it forward for future generations, making sure that future generations of humans and animals have a home. And so for me, sustainability and veganism truly go hand in hand, because you can't have one without the other.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
That was delicious Thai iced tea, by the way. That was so good. That was so good. Thank you, Richie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We barely ate our food.
I know.
It's like, I want to eat more. So why don't you tell us about where you're from, how the vegan journey started, and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm from Russia, but I've been traveling for the past 5 years because my job has been remote, so I could go to many places. And my vegan journey started 5 years ago. I had a lot of friends who were vegan or vegetarian, and I was kind of exposed to a lot of information about who vegans are, what vegans eat, etc.
Yeah.
Because before that, I wasn't that much curious, and I wasn't that much into it, so I didn't question things. And then I was surprised that vegan food can be so diverse. There are so many things to eat, and actually, vegans don't miss out on anything. You can still enjoy the food, and you can still be vegan. And then I started watching and then I learned that there are a lot of health benefits if you become vegan, and that was my first drive to try it out and to become vegan. But then I started watching documentaries on YouTube and Netflix like Cowspiracy and many others. And then I was like, I actually learned how the meat and dairy industries work. And after I saw all of this, I just realized that I couldn't go back to eating meat or drinking milk or whatever. Because I think health cannot be enough of motivation to stay vegan. But when you see with your own eyes all this cruelty that happens in the dairy and meat industries, it's impossible to
Ignore it.
I just start seeing meat as a corpse, as a dead animal.
Yes.
Like, I just cannot imagine eating it ever again.
Yeah. I call it the vegan lens. I feel like the way I look at the world is so different, because if I see someone carrying a leather bag, I don't see a leather bag. I see dead animal skin.
Yeah.
I think it shifts our perception a little bit, and you see this in, like, when I go to grocery stores, I can be like, okay, this is vegan, this is not vegan. I don't see it as cow milk, I see it as like breast milk of another mother. So I think the perception changes immediately.
Yeah, I just see it as suffering.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah, that's what it is. So that's how your vegan journey started.
Yeah, right.
That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But what inspired you to start the platform Local Vegan?
So, as I said, I was traveling for the past 5 years. And usually I build my entire trips around food. So I like going out, I like eating food, I like trying out new restaurants. And at some point I was going through my photos on my phone, and I realized I had so many food pictures. And then I was talking to my friend who suggested, why don't you start some page, because you're so passionate about food? Why don't you share with other people? And then I was like, it could be also some kind of activism that I do. I can show people that vegan food can be so different, can be so diverse, it can be so delicious.
Yeah.
And it can be affordable, because so many people complain that, being vegan is expensive, but it's completely false.
Why do you say that?
Because there are so many options, and a lot of vegan products, a lot of plant-based food is actually cheap. Take, for example, lentils. It's like one of the cheapest things you can get at a supermarket. And it's one of the most nutritious and healthy things.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's expensive if you're trying to go for the alternatives, the fancy alternatives and replacements. But if you're just eating whole food, plant-based, that's cultural, that's local, it is in fact much cheaper and healthier than... we're not telling everyone to eat like processed meat. We're not telling everyone to, eat something that comes from America. We've got the time empty. Thank you.
I think, some people complain that being vegan is so expensive. Even on my page, people say, this restaurant looks so fancy, it looks so expensive, I cannot afford it.
Yeah.
But we don't have to forget that there are different kinds of restaurants, even among the vegan ones and among the regular restaurants. What I mean is that you can always find an upscale place, you can find an average place, you can find a very budget place.
Yeah.
And the same goes for vegan restaurants. You can eat at a food court for as little as 50 baht, which is just 120 USD. Or you can go to a very expensive place and have one pizza for, 20 USD or even more.
That's true. What's your experience been like as a traveler? How do you travel on a vegan diet? Is that difficult?
I think it depends on where you go. Because if you go to a big city, especially if this country has a lot of tourists, it's usually very easy. But if you go to more remote places or smaller towns or more, nature places, it can be very challenging, even in a place like Thailand.
What do you do when there's no vegan options?
I just go to a supermarket, I buy things like canned beans or some veggies. For example, I went on a trip just last May, and I rented a car and I was driving around the country. And I knew that I would be going to some places that are very remote and it would be so hard to find some vegan food. So I was just carrying like a portable stove and a pot so that I could always go to any supermarket, just get some fresh veggies or
What about people who don't
anything.
have that option? If I'm traveling as a vegetarian or vegan, and if I'm in a country that has very few options, what is the best way for me to navigate navigate the local cuisine while still making sure that I'm well fed without just relying on like packet of chips or French fries?
Yeah, I think it might be challenging. I can tell you from my experience about living in Pakistan, because even though Pakistan is one of the biggest lentil exporters, it is still so hard to find. I think last time I went to Pakistan was 2 years back, and I went to Karachi, and it's one of the biggest cities in Asia, with the population, I don't know, like 20 million people. And in Karachi, there is not a single restaurant that is completely vegan.
Wow.
And it was very challenging to find anything to eat. But I think the only thing we can do is that we can drive supply by demand. So what I mean is that whenever I go to a restaurant, I make it clear that I'm vegan and I want vegan options. And then I try to explain to them what vegan means, what I want, what I can eat, what I cannot eat.
Yeah.
And I think the more often the restaurant owners hear that, oh, there's actually demand for vegan food, the more likely they're to introduce it.
Yeah, because even when I used to be vegetarian, even the definition of vegetarian is so different and diverse, because in India, vegetarian means it has no eggs. It has dairy, but it's got no eggs. In other cultures, even fish is vegetarian.
Yeah, it can be so confusing.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's important to make sure that the food you're ordering is vegan. I think you just need to be very clear and very specific about what you expect to see and what do you mean by vegan. So whenever I go to a country and I'm not sure that whenever I'm not sure that we have the same definition of vegan, I just repeat, oh, I cannot eat eggs, I cannot eat milk, I cannot eat fish sauce, I cannot eat this and this, honey.
Honey's a big one, yeah. People miss honey. So many times I'm like, oh yeah, I'm vegan, but I'll get something that has honey in it or that has a little bit of cheese.
Yeah, or there are so many places that call themselves plant-based, but they still serve honey or dairy.
Yeah.
It might be
Confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the biggest misconceptions I had about India and particularly Mumbai was that, oh, it's going to be so easy for me to be vegan in Mumbai. But in fact, when I was in Mumbai, it was one of the most challenging places to be vegan. It's very easy to be vegetarian, but it's so hard to be vegan because almost every dish that seems vegan, there's going to be either dairy or ghee.
You have a book coming out.
Yeah, and I'm so excited.
Tell me about the book.
Yeah, so my book will focus on vegan street food in Thailand because when I first arrived here, I would go to the places like Chinatown, to food markets, because Thailand is so famous for its food and so many people come here just for food.
Yeah.
And for me as a vegan, I would go to Chinatown, to a night market, and I had no idea what I can eat and what I cannot eat because there's an abundance of food. There are so many different things, but nothing is labeled, so you cannot understand, oh, is it vegan, is it vegetarian, or what is this? I had no idea. And it took me so much time then I would go to the markets with my local friends and they would teach me, oh, this is actually vegan by default, even though it's not labeled as vegan, but it's already vegan. And then I was like, oh, this is actually so delicious. I had no idea that it was vegan. And then I did more and more research what was vegan. And I found out that almost 90% of all Thai desserts and street food snacks are actually vegan.
Yeah. Rice made of like...
Mostly they're made from rice flour, coconut milk. Yeah.
Yeah.
And historically, the consumption of dairy has been very low because it's much easier to find a coconut and it's much cheaper.
Yeah, that's true. Are there any misconceptions you think tourists have about Thai food?
I think many tourists think that Thai food has a lot of seafood or meat and everything has fish sauce, but it's actually false.
We're doing the Jae Festival,
Yeah.
the vegetarian festival. A lot of the popular stalls will have fried food. So a lot of people think that vegan food is unhealthy, but it doesn't have to be. It's law of supply and demand. So a lot of people like that kind of stuff. And so you'll see a lot of those stalls. But just like everything in life, you can always find healthy options, cheaper options. There's always this myth that vegan food is really expensive. But like Vlad likes to say, you can find vegan stalls and food courts all over Bangkok, right? You have some favorites that you go to. Yeah,
so many tourists go to malls in Bangkok and so many people come here just to go to a mall. And every mall in Bangkok has at least one completely vegetarian place, and you can eat there for as cheap as, I don't know, 100 baht, which is just 3 USD.
And that's a full meal. Like at Terminal 21, there's a food court at the top of the mall.
Yeah.
And there's a vegetarian stall, and you can get a rice and 3 like kind of side dishes for like 50 baht, which is like $1.20.
And it's
like-
very nutritious. And
It's quite good.
it's more on the healthy side.
Yeah.
It's like 20 different options, so it's very, very assorted what you can get. You can get anything from like the fake meat stuff to like, vegetables. Khop kun ka.
Thank you.
I can't think of any other country where you can eat for 50 baht
Yeah.
a complete meal. Maybe
Singapore as
Vietnam.
well. Singapore, Vietnam, Mumbai, I guess, but depends. Like India
Singapore
depends
would be
what
really
you're
hard.
doing.
Singapore is a lot more expensive than Bangkok.
Yeah, the hawker center though, you do get like
Really?
rice and dosa and all these like things for like $1, $2 too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'd recommend like eating in hawker centers definitely. Is there? Do you wanna eat?
Like, is there a vegan stall in like Newton?
Newton Hawker Center, there is.
Really?
Most like hawker centers would, at least like the Indian stall, would be predominantly plant-based, or you'd get an option at least. But yeah, I realized this 7 years. I lived in Singapore for 7 years, and last year when I went back is when I actually reached out to vegans in Singapore, and they took me around. And there's so many local things that I'd never tried, like bean curd, and they have this like fried dough fritter that they dip in soy milk.
Oh,
And it's
with the patong ko.
Yeah.
It's like the round one.
Yeah, with and they just have that with like fresh soy milk, and it's a delicacy. And I've never tried that because I used to just go for either foreign food like salads or whatever, but I never like delved into local Singaporean food that was just plant-based to begin with.
This fried dough is very popular in Thailand. If you go to Chinatown, there is a place where you can get this fried dough, deep fried dough with vegan condensed milk.
Yeah.
And it's a very delicious snack.
Do you both
Chinatown is like his big stomping ground here. He loves going to shoot his viral content there.
Yeah.
So many of his videos have gone like 2 to 5 million views.
Wow.
And they're usually in Chinatown. Simple places that you wouldn't assume would be vegan,
Yeah.
but actually are already
There you go.
accidentally vegan, right?
Accidentally vegan.
And
Do you-
Chinatown is so rich in culture. That's why.
Oh, even the Chinatown in Singapore, yeah. Like most amount of vegan food. What do you think of navigating? Like sometimes when you're vegan, you're the only vegan in the room. I'm used to like being the only vegan in conferences. I'm used to being the only vegan in my family. I'm used to, being the only vegan even in like climate spaces. And it can sometimes feel really isolating. And a lot of times like ex-vegans have told me this is what I used to be tired of. I got tired of being the only person without a sense of community and like being the only vegan in a family of non-vegans, especially like people that you love and it's culture and tradition that you're giving up on. How does someone navigate that?
This is a really good question because I've read a statistic recently that said 80 to 90% of people who go vegetarian or vegan go back to eating animals.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a marathon and not a sprint. And our goal should be to encourage people to adopt the vegan lifestyle, but also stay vegan. And those two challenges can sometimes not necessarily go hand in hand. And so I think finding like-minded people so we don't feel alone is really, really important. And now with social media and the idea that you can expand your friendship circles globally in the flip of an eye,
Yeah.
can make us feel less alone. And I think that it's important to seek out those people that remind us that there are like-minded people out there that also care about animals and the planet and share these ethical beliefs that we do. Even if we don't have that in our immediate circle.
Oh, I think it's changed a lot because last year I went to my friend's wedding and it was a very huge wedding in Bangkok. It was more than 200 guests. And what I loved is that they actually cared to provide a lot of plant-based options for the guests
That was here in Bangkok or somewhere else?
in Bangkok.
No, that's helpful. Some of my friends, like even during their weddings, if they know I'm coming, they tell the catering company that, hey, we have one vegan guest, and then I see items being labeled as vegan, and I see that has changed already. I'm like, I love that someone thought of me before I got there and like made that change. But not having a community can be isolating. And there is this trend that I'm seeing of ex-vegans, people who just were, even celebrities for that matter, that used to be vegan, and now they say I had brain fog or I had I used to, who was it, Russell Brand? That recently said that I used to be a vegan hippie and now I'm here eating steak. And he made that sound so aspirational. I'm like, I don't know how you can be against animal exploitation and then suddenly decide that now you're pro it.
So even if they said they were vegan, I feel like they were never truly vegan. Because if you truly are vegan and then you internalize those beliefs of being against animal exploitation and violence,
Yeah.
how can you possibly ever go back? I know I couldn't.
No,
I would
there's
rather.
no way.
I'd rather die than to literally live my life predicated on living at the expense of other living beings.
Yeah.
What concerns me is that these kind of videos, they get so much engagement and so
Yeah.
many non-vegans seem to like it. But I don't understand why. Like, it makes non-vegans happy, especially people who are very skeptical about veganism. It makes them so happy that someone who was vegan stopped being vegan.
Because there's this internalized guilt that people feel, whether they acknowledge it or not, that you live a life that shows them that it's possible. And whether they acknowledge it or not, that's the elephant in the room. We all know that that's the case.
Yeah. And then when someone fails, it's like, oh, that person failed, so I'm so glad I didn't do that. But that's not the same for everyone. I mean, if there's this brain fog thing, I don't understand anyway, because a lot of people say I had brain fog when I was vegan. I don't even know what that means. One, understand what you're eating, like learn about nutrition, because you can't be eating the same thing. So you have to learn what you're supposed to swap and how much of that you're going to have to eat. And two, like if you're not in it for the ethical reasons, I feel like in the long term it's really hard to even stay vegan. Then you're just plant-based for health. Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
But to put that out on a platform and just because it didn't work for you, because you didn't try it properly, and discouraging other people from doing that, I think that's really dangerous at the same time. Because there's this steak and butter girl. I don't know if you've seen that. Like this girl who's going viral,
Yes.
who said that the only thing she eats now is like raw steak and raw
Oh,
butter.
I saw this. So disgusting.
And she, like, obviously she's gone viral on so many profiles. And yeah, Lily, I know, it's shocking.
right, baby?
It's shocking.
I see these this comic pop up in my feed all the time. It's like a parent telling their two children at a campfire, like, there was a time where people ate animals, and it's like a horror story in the future. And I hope that that's the future that comes to pass, that we'll look back at these dark ages where like animals have somehow been commoditized and reduced to, meat and fur and whatever. And we realize that they're actually our companions. They're like our fellow living beings that we share this planet with. And that this like kind of Star Trek future of the fact that there are our brothers and sisters will come to pass.
Yeah. The animals are here with us, not for us.
Exactly.
When people say that, that's the truth. The word dominion has been ripped apart. It doesn't mean dominance. It literally means like stewardship and living in harmony with these beings. That's
Why
what.
be ruthless exploiters when we can be compassionate caretakers of our fellow living beings? We have that choice. Why choose to be cruel? Why not choose to be kind?
Yeah. I do want to ask, what is the best way you think vegans can advocate outside of the echo chamber? Because so many times when we're preaching or when we're talking about veganism, even when we host events or we launch something, even vegan restaurants would only attract vegan consumers most often, especially if you say you're a vegan restaurant. But what is the best form of doing advocacy outside of the vegan echo chamber? How do we reach non-vegans and how do we bring them into the movement?
I think being a testament to the lifestyle yourself, walking the talk, and practicing what you preach is super important. I mean, friends like Vlad will give me a hard time for like going shirtless all the time, but sometimes you catch more flies with honey in a way, in the sense that vegan honey, exactly. I love these little phrases. It's like feed two birds with one scone instead of kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
But I think that by making the lifestyle aspirational and just being an altogether healthy, fun, aspirational person that happens to be vegan is a way to kind of capture people's attention, because they see this person living this like fun life and they wonder like, how do you sustain it? And so I get questions all the time. So people might say like, oh, you post all these thirst traps and you do all this like eye candy stuff, but actually there's a method to the madness. I actually do it because I want people to start asking me questions like, what do you eat? Like, what do you do for workouts? Where do you get your protein? I welcome these questions
Yeah.
because it invites a new dialogue. But I think by just showing, not telling sometimes, it's really important rather than, because some people don't want to be preached at,
Yeah.
but they kind of want to be led to the well in the sense that they see that your life is something that they aspire to, and then it invites questions. And I think that that's another softer approach to encouraging people to think about these things.
I actually love that, and I think that's what you're doing with food. You show how inviting it is, you show how accessible it is, you show how delicious it is. You do that with food, you obviously do that with being shirtless, as you said, and showing that you can be fit and healthy, and have a dog who's thriving on a vegan diet as well. So I think doing it that way, just by living and showing and not telling, I think that's really cool. And I'm trying to do that, I think, with fashion as well, that you can wear incredible clothes. You don't have to dress like a curtain just to, even if you don't wear animal products.
Yeah.
I think, there's different ways of advocacy. And just showing that you can be fit, healthy, you can look good, you can have a thriving social life, your vitals are 100 and 100. I think just by living your best life, you're doing more for the animals than, because it's so hard not to be depressed. The kind of content we consume and what we know, it's so hard not to hurt yourself in that process, that sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough and you're not taking care of yourself and your mental health, because there are animals dying on an everyday basis. But just looking good, feeling good, and taking care of yourself, I think, is the best way of being an advocate, because you also want to last longer.
I think it's also important to show people that they don't have to go full all in, from the beginning. Even small actions and small steps, they play a big role. And I think it's important to show them that it's actually very simple to be vegan. And
I think it's important to take a multi-pronged approach, just like you do. Living and thriving is already a big thing. Using your platform, creating this amazing podcast that I was already a fan of before you brought us on. These are all ways, and if we just choose to focus on one way, we're kind of depriving ourselves of the power that we possibly can have.
Yeah, I think about that all the time, and someone told me this. I was at COP29, and there were barely any vegan options, and I was with the plant-based treaty, and we were advocating for more plant-based options everywhere. And someone told me that when I feel like I don't want to go to the gym, I remember that it's for the animals. I want to go to the gym and I want to look good and I want to be fit for the animals, because I want people to look at me the same way that, you said people reach out to you asking what do you do, because it clearly works. And that's my motivation. I started going to the gym every day after that, because I was like, I want to be fit for the animals, because I know I can do it. We
are vessels. And you need your vessel to thrive if you want to sustain yourself. You asked about sustainability. There is vegan sustainability too, in the sense that we need to sustain ourselves and make sure that we're in it for the long haul in order to continue advocating for animals. Because if we burn out and we become ex-vegans, then we've done a disservice to the animals.
100%. What is the power of media, and why do you think it's so important to use our platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, whatever that might be, to speak for this cause?
Incredibly powerful. It gives every single person a microphone to the world to kind of speak out for what they stand for. And I think that there's so many things out there in the world right now that cause damage. Young girls have body image issues because of what they see on Instagram. Young boys do as well. There's a lot of things that are actually causing harm, and we need to be the counterbalance to that. We need to provide content that actually makes people feel good about themselves and show that anyone can live a wonderful life. Everyone is beautiful, everyone is strong, and has the potential to be a hero. We can all be our own heroes rather than looking for affirmation from other people. I think that's important, and I think that it gives people that power to make a difference and realize that they have that platform themselves.
Yeah. What about your use of social media?
yeah, I just think the more people talk about it, the more people who are not vegans yet, they get more exposed to listening and seeing what veganism is like and how good it is for us and for the animals and for the environment and for so many causes.
My friend here is very, very modest. He has single-handedly helped many, many small vegan businesses grow exponentially through his content, because he posts one thing for a small vegan business owner. their sales jump exponentially. So this is the power that someone like Vlad and everyone can have if
Yeah.
they own their own power.
Yeah. Yeah, because if so many vegan businesses are going bankrupt, and if they can just get the right support and right amplification, right attention on them as well, if we start highlighting and supporting these brands rather than the ones that are still stuck back in the old age, so to speak, I think there is that shift. And money needs to go in the right places. It's such a powerful vote and tool
Yes.
where you decide which businesses survive and which businesses go bankrupt.
We need to be
Use that.
conscious consumers, and
Yeah.
I think that let our money do the walking and the talking.
Yeah.
So I will always use every opportunity when I have to arrange an event or meet up with friends to choose a vegan establishment, because even though a non-vegan place might have vegan options, I want my money to go to a place that needs it and deserves it for what they do. And so Vlad and I consciously always throw our dinners with friends at vegan restaurants, and I think that's really important to do.
Yeah.
I think even as a traveler, when you go to new places, it's so important to support small local businesses
Absolutely.
that care about the cause.
Yeah, and I know so many travelers who come to a different country but will go to the same establishments that exist in all the other countries, like the chains,
Like
without even
McDonald's.
trying. Yeah, don't want to name the worst one out of them, but that
It's
is
just
what it
whenever I
is.
see foreigners at a McDonald's in Thailand, I think, what are you doing there? Thailand
Yeah.
has so much good food to offer, and
Exactly.
you choose
Oh,
McDonald's.
but like food poisoning, my tummy can't handle
I saw that video of you going to the McDonald's. It was amazing.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
It was really cute.
So that's what people say, that I buy meat ethically and humanely. One, there's no such thing as ethical
No
or
such
humane
thing.
meat.
Yeah.
There is no way to kill something that does not kill someone that does not want to be killed. At the same time, how many people really go to these farms and check what the conditions are? You see a happy cow plastered on a milk packet where the cow is living like machine.
In some ways, I actually think that the betrayal is even that much stronger when you've
Yeah.
lulled the animal into the sense of complacency that they're being cared for.
Yeah.
That betrayal is even that much worse. So all these people who say, "And I pray for the animals, and I put prayer flags," no, you're trying to assuage your own conscience. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, because that's one of the questions that I get. What if I grew that chicken? What if I raised that chicken and that chicken was in my backyard, could roam wherever, run wherever, and I'm eating that egg, the cage-free, the free-range egg? Is it ethical for me to have that?
You know what's the most ethical thing with the backyard chicken is actually to open up the egg and feed it back to the chicken to restore the nutrients that have been depleted from the process of laying egg after egg after egg. They're ovulations. So chickens were supposed to lay an egg a month. They've been genetically manipulated to the point where they're laying every day. It's actually extremely depleting on their bodies. And so most sanctuaries will actually feed the eggs back to the chickens.
Yeah,
People
'cause
don't realize that.
it's the ovulation, as you said. It's the
Yeah.
period of the chicken. So we menstruate once a month. Imagine menstruating like 100 times a year. That's I don't even know what to
And
say.
why do we come up with these, like, we think of all these crazy scenarios, like, what would you do if you were on a deserted island
Yeah.
and there was only a pig there? Well, one, I would want companionship to make sure that, like, my dying
survive,
days
yeah.
are comforted. And also, why do we think about the pig on a deserted island scenario when the scenario at hand is actually, what would you do if you live in a world where there is a plethora of abundance, fruits and vegetables that can nourish your body,
Yeah.
and you don't have to harm? That's the question we should ask ourselves, because that's the
Absolutely.
situation at hand.
Yeah.
What do we do when we have everything at our disposal? Why would we not choose to be kind?
What do you think the future of veganism is, both in Thailand and globally? Where do you think it's headed?
I think veganism is on the rise, and I think it's going to be rising in the long term as well.
I agree with Vlad. I think it's onward and upwards. There's more vegan companies these days. There's more vegan restaurants opening up. There's so many options that are now at our disposal. We have all the tools necessary. It's easier now than it was even just 3 to 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I feel that it's just about continuing to educate people, to put out, these kind of, episodes to show people that you can live an amazing, amazing life without harming anyone else.
Yeah.
It's completely possible. It's just about recalibrating our minds. We actually don't give anything up. We simply stop taking what was never ours to take.
Yes.
And if we just tell ourselves this fundamental truth, that their lives are their lives,
Yeah.
it becomes incredibly easy. I mean, growing up, one of the first things my parents instilled in me is you shouldn't steal. You know, you can't go into a store and take something that isn't yours. To me, the ultimate theft is the theft of life.
Yes.
Their life is their life. And when we're reminded of this truth, it becomes such an easy choice. There's only one choice.
Yeah. I love what you said about it's not about giving up, because so many times when people ask me what is it that you can have and can't have, and I was like, oh, I gave up milk, I gave up cheese, I gave up leather, wool, suede, whatever, right? And the word giving up almost makes it seem like it's a compromise. But I'm like, no, it's never felt like giving up, because I gained so much. There's so much compassion, there's so much knowledge, there's so much intention in what I buy and how I live my life, that it's given me way more than I could, like, ever take away from who I was before this. Like being an ex-vegan or even being a vegetarian, I'm like, no, you were living in denial. You were blindfolded and you were just, you're indoctrinated, right? You just follow whatever everyone else is doing, but you never questioned anything. So that ability to really be conscious and be intentional and to know that kindness and empathy is driving you, I feel like it's the best gift I've ever received.
Agree.
I've never given up anything. It just, I
And
stopped
that's the
taking what was
key-
not mine.
That's the key to sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, sustaining the lifestyle means telling ourselves that we're not giving up. That veganism is actually not a state of deprivation. It's enjoying. It's like relishing the wonderful flavors and textures and different experiences that are possible out there. There's so many options at our disposal if we just simply seek it out.
Even in terms of food, before I was vegan, my diet was so boring and I missed out on so many things. I didn't know that food can be so diverse and so,
Rich.
yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know about all these fruits and veggies and lentils and beans.
Yeah. You eat the same 4 to 5 animals, whereas there's like thousands and thousands of plants and
Yeah.
fruits and vegetables that you're yet to discover.
And I never knew this until I became vegan.
Yeah. I think that's what I mean. The mindfulness and the intentionality that you go seeking for those flavors, or you go seeking for alternatives, or you become so conscious as to what you're putting inside your body and also outside, that it's like an awakening. For sure. What's one vegan misconception you'd both like to bust?
I just hope that in the future, veganism and sustainability and the plastic-free movement will start to go more hand in hand. Like when I hear your story about going to the conference and being like the only vegan there and people not making that connection, it really saddens me, because there's so much focus on plastic straws and single-use plastics.
Yeah.
But plastics are only 7-8% of plastics in the world.
Yeah.
Over 50% is discarded fishing nets and other fishing gear. So if we truly care about reducing plastic in the oceans, if we care about the oceans, if we care about the planet, we have to target the biggest culprits and not just the feel-good, easy, low-hanging fruit.
Those swaps don't even make a real difference, but yeah, on a broader scale.
I just went to an event. It was a sustainability event in Bangkok.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because they had a lot of food booths, like a lot of restaurants came there to sell the food. And none of the booths was vegan, even though the entire event was about sustainability.
That's the most
I don't
hypocritical
get it,
thing.
how
That's what I
people
mean.
can work in sustainability. And
Yeah, and that's after knowing the science that the most sustainable diet is, forget the ethics, forget everything else, just from a purely like carbon emissions point of view, plant-based food is the most sustainable food.
Huh.
That's blows my mind. Wow. What is that?
I don't want to have this one.
You.
and fermented rice.
Yum. Thank you.
ให้เก็บจานได้เลย
ได้ครับ
Delicious.
จานมัสมั่นเลย
Do you want to have the bread?
Do you want me to show that to the camera? Do you want me to show that? Lily, look what we have here.
Wasn't bad?
Yum. Do you see her reaction?
Yeah.
Lily,
She's
look
more of a
at
foodie
this.
than I am.
Yum, yum, yum.
One cup.
Yeah. Is that shortbread? Cheesecake? What is that?
This is cheesecake, right?
Yes. With a shortbread cookie.
Yum. Sorry? Done? Thank you. And then we have... Wait,
What is this?
what is that?
It's called khao It's fermented sweet rice.
Fermented sweet rice. And what's the sir? No. Hold it like this. Yep. Yum. What's one policy change that you'd like to see in Thailand? If you could make one policy change, what would that be?
I would give subsidies to vegan establishments and vegan agriculture, and I would put penalties for things that cause environmental harm.
Yeah. Such as the meat and dairy industry.
And then I probably would make sure that all schools have vegan options for children at an early age so they have that choice.
Absolutely. Oh my god.
And mango sticky rice has a lot to do
Mango
with it.
sticky rice, that's...
Yes.
Look at this. Oh, wait. Oh my god.
It's like edible art.
I'm in heaven. I never want to leave. Lily, you don't even know what's coming. That's beautiful. So that's sticky rice. Yeah. We've got some sticky rice. Is that coconut meat?
Yes.
Coconut meat with coconut milk and Thai mango.
Looks really good.
This is more for you, Richie, but if you could teach the world one Thai phrase, what would it be? Actually, if you could teach the world one Thai phrase that reflects your values, what would that be?
I would probably say nam chai, which is compassion. And it's literally water, heart. And I think that's just a beautiful phrase that kind of encapsulates a lot of what Lily and I stand for.
What's the one thing you've learned about yourself through this journey? Like being on this journey? Being vegan, what's the one thing you've learned about yourself?
I think being principled is not always easy. It's not always the easy choice. And that I am a lot stronger than I gave myself credit for. That being compassionate and principled in a world where violence is everywhere is not an easy thing.
Yeah.
But you have to really be strong in your convictions and you have to know what you're fighting for in order to make a difference in the world. And she's a daily reminder to me of what I'm fighting for because I want all living beings to be as loved and protected as Lily is.
Same.
I just think one of the things that I learned that people don't need meat or animal products to thrive.
Yeah.
You can be healthy, you can be happy, you can be good looking, you can be fit, whatever. And there is no need for the animals and environment to suffer.
Absolutely. I love that.
And why look for excuses? A cute little white vegan dog can be vegan, so why can't we all be vegan?
You're a star, Lily. Yes, you are.
Look
Thank
how
you
happy
so
she is.
much, guys.
Thank
This was
you.
so much fun.
This was
We ate
super
some
fun.
delicious food. We did a lot of advocacy. We busted a lot of myths. Love what both of you do. More power, plant-based power to you both, and continue advocating for a fairer, more equitable world that's safer and kinder for everyone.
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing
Cheers.
this podcast.
Vegan power.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.